Speaking of elections, Western Australia went to the polls yesterday. Now, I think it went roughly how we all thought it was. This was 2 hours after the polls closed.
It's gone to 11.3. It was at 12 before. There's plenty more vote to come in. This swing could get bigger. We could see more seats change hands, but the Labor Party will once again form government in WA.
Yes, Tom, and Tom Connell has called it, our chief election analyst, another win for the Labor Party in WA. The Labor dominance continues.
And about an hour later, Roger Cook claimed victory.
Western Australia has voted for a future which is made in WA. Earlier this evening, I received a call from Libby Mettam. She offered her congratulations to our WA Labor team for being elected to form a new government and wish us well. I congratulated Libby on the tireless work she put into this campaign.
A future made in WA. Get this Trumpian politics out of this country, will you? Now, of course, this was despite an 18% swing away from Labor, and Cook made some effort to distance himself from federal Labor during the campaign. Look, I don't think you can read too much into this federally, Claire. I think this is probably what was going to happen. The Libs were never going to win this election back. It was an absolute landslide last time, but they have clawed some room back. Not in terms of seats, really, but if you look at every single seat in Victoria, nearly every single one of them has had a swing back towards the Liberal Party, almost as a correction of course, I think, after the thumping majority that McGowan got at the last election.
True, and Cook himself is a moderate. He's not one of these hard lefties, although I believe he may have been a bit more of a hard lefty in his student days, apparently.
Oh, we all were, come on.
But I do think it shows that the Liberal Party doesn't have a message that really resonates maybe with younger people. I don't see much of a narrative around housing, and that will show up in state results, I think, particularly if the Liberal Party are seen as the party that represents landlords and the party of NIMBYism. So I don't think it's too much of a surprise.
I think just arithmetically, there is no way that the Libs could probably have done any better than they did anyway. That's not to say it is a bad or poorer than expected result for Roger Cook. It's actually a really good result. It's better than Mark McGowan's previous election from the one before. So Mark McGowan was just so absolutely adored. I mean, the West is parochial at the best of times. I remember when someone was attacked by a crocodile and the first thing police confirmed is that he was an Easterner. So it's like, it's okay, guys, he's not one of ours. He's not one of ours. And Mark McGowan was just adored. Famously, the Libs were reduced to 2 seats. They weren't even the dominant party in their own coalition, let alone the dominant party in WA. The bad news again for the Libs, like in Victoria, is that yes, there's a massive swing away from the government, although still very comfortably returned to WA. But even in the Werribee by-election that everyone's crying about, that wasn't that good a result for the Liberal Party. Lots of votes went away from Labor, but they did not go to the coalition. So if you look at just the preliminary results from last night here, that 18% went away from Labor. Only about 1 in 3 of those votes went to the coalition. The rest went to the Greens, which means they'll come back to Labor. Independents and others, they'll probably come back to Labor as well. And One Nation, of course, they probably won't come back to Labor. So there is that. So I think, for better or worse, and it's interesting to say about Roger Cook, he is from the right, so he is a moderate, just like Mark McGowan. The right don't have the numbers in WA, though. The left actually controls the party. So if they actually do the stupid thing, which the left always does, and try to take control and then start spouting their moronic crap, you could have another state that's a bit like Queensland under Stephen Miles. And so, don't despair, Liberals. The left can always screw themselves over. They're very, very good at it. They've been practising for years.
Well, let's hope they can do that to prove the point. Kel, I believe you have a slightly different take on how the Libs did.
I think it was pretty disastrous for the Libs, and I've been thinking about it ever since I said that to you. You're sounding fairly miserable and depressed about it. I think the reason is, if you look at Libby Mettam's record, when the Voice was announced, she supported it. It took her a long time to read the room and change her mind and oppose it. Aboriginal heritage laws, Indigenous heritage laws. She originally supported them. Then when she discovered WA didn't like them, she swung the other way. when Cook announced that they were going to close all the coal-fired power stations in Western Australia, she supported that and said the Libs could spend even more money on wind and solar. I think there is a lesson here for the federal Liberals, and that is you've got to have a distinctive character. You've got to be someone clear. You actually need conviction politics. That's what John Howard delivered. That's what Hawke delivered. Anyone who's done anything worthwhile in Australian politics has been a conviction politician. The idea that I'm just a different person to that person and my views are slightly different was a disaster in Victoria. That's what destroyed the Victorian Liberal Party. That's why they've been in opposition for so long. That's what's happening in WA. I don't know about South Australia, but I know the Libs there are an absolute mess. There's a lesson here for Dutton. They really need to carve out. The one thing Trump did was to say, this is a really clear vision for America, and this is very unlike everyone else's vision for America, and it worked. There is a place in the electoral map for that, and I think Dutton can learn that lesson from this.
Well, could this potentially become a 4-term Labor government in WA, Parnell?
Oh, I have no doubt. I mean, with margins like that, it could easily become a 4-term Labor government. And we've seen those elsewhere, and, you know, politics does that. But I think that we also can look sort of at some other more interesting results on a seat-by-seat basis, which have federal implications. One of those I was really interested to see in Collie Preston, which is an old coal mining town, very Labor, very Union, 20% swing to the Liberals. And this is a town where nuclear has been proposed under the Coalition's plan. So to your point about standing for something, but also to the point about, you know, there are a whole lot of towns like this around Australia who know that their livelihood is about to close down, and they are keen for something to replace that. So there is a vision piece in how do we ensure prosperity going forward for people like that who, you know, you don't necessarily need to go as far as Trump. You can take people out of that doldrums without going full culture wars.
And that YouGov poll that I was talking about earlier on a federal level showed 3 seats in the Hunter, which is coal mining territory, flipping from the Libs to Labor as well. So it would seem to be a bit of a trend. There were also reports, would you believe it, that voting booths were running out of ballot papers.
It was just the Liberal ones.
How did that happen, right? You've got one job.
That is terrible.
You're the
That is terrible.
Western Australian Electoral Commission. You have an election once every 4 years, and you can't stock all the booths with the number of voting slips that might be used.
Well, how many were they short by, do we know?
I don't know the numbers, but reportedly there were people being turned away from booths but because they didn't have
Which
enough
does happen
ballot
from time to time. They tell them to go somewhere else. But yeah, if it's happening at the end of the day, which obviously is when it's going to happen, because you know then that means that whether or not you can get to another booth in time could make the difference between
Couldn't there
whether
be
or
someone
not
in a back room with a photocopy?
I know, quick, make them up. You know,
the ballot papers have to be a little bit more, more authentic than that.
It was the fault of the Greens. They said we couldn't cut down too many trees to have democracy here in Australia. That's a bad thing.